Good afternoon, everyone who watch us here and online. We are representatives of expert community who deal with the issues of the association agreement, and we invited representatives of Ukrainian power, parliament, and office of the president. And remotely with us, we have the new head of the governmental office on European and Euro-Atlantic integration, and today we are going to speak about the tasks of Ukraine, what tasks as experts we see concerning relations with EU. This event that is now we are having, this is dedicated to the EU-Ukraine summit that will happen in 2 weeks. This is a presidential event due to which one of our guests is Ihor Zhovkva, and he is the deputy head of the governmental office of coordination of European and Euro-Atlantic integration. This is a presidential event, and it identifies also many technical issues. And online from Brussels, we are having Natalia Forsyuk, new head of the governmental office, and Ivanna Klympush-Tsintsadze, former vice premier, and today she is head of committee of Verkhovna Rada on integration of Ukraine into the European Union. Why we have decided to meet here and discuss these issues concerning EU-Ukraine summit? Ukrainian expert community gathered priorities concerning relations between EU and Ukraine, and it happened in 2020. Then we had COVID, and priorities of the world players changed, and we need to correct the priorities in our EU-Ukraine relations, and we would like to present the view of civil society, what the main priorities are, and what we may expect in midterm prospect. And we are speaking about 2023 perspective, and maybe the most interesting for the journalists is the EU-Ukraine summit. Of course, we cannot guarantee that we will forecast all the results, but we try together with experts to form a list of those criteria, the achievement of which will show that the summit is successful. And without them, the summit won't be successful. Maybe this is not the case, but we would like to put the goal not only for ourselves, but also for EU and for Ukraine, what Ukrainian society wants actually concerning this. And I'm Serhiy Sydorenko, and I'm an editor-in-chief of Evropeiska Pravda newspaper. And I would like to present a document that we are going to make it public in Evropeiska Pravda news outlet. I would like to speak about our expectations of the summit, and then the experts who were involved in the creation of this document, they will speak about priorities further on, and then we would like to hear from the representatives of power in order to reflect the position of Ukraine on the whole. So we would like to take into account the considerations. So let's start. I would like to show the presentation on the screen, and more than 20 experts have been working on this document. I won't mention them all, and this is really important, and our speakers, they have this in their materials. This is not just an initiative of 20 people. This is the consensus expert solution, those that were involved in the preparation of the association agreement and the supervision on it. And we have topics, the priority we divided them in 10 blocks, and I'm going to speak about expectations of summit. First, justice, freedom, and security. This is a complex block that is a high priority for EU. This is justice reform, anti-corruption reform, and others. We would like that during the summit, Ukraine and EU would agree that so-called roadmap of G7 concerning priority of court and anti-corruption reform be recognized as an instrument of implementation of the association agreement, despite that this map appeared later. And we are interested in this reform of courts, and we would like that it should be the official priority. This is the wish to Ukrainian side. At the same time, we have expectations concerning European side. The EU should agree that we should work on joint border control. And we experts, we believe that concerning this border control, that EU delays this process. Second block is liberalization of trade in goods. There is a wish that during the summit, the sides confirmed consultations and to speed up liberalization of trade in goods, to broaden border quotas, visa-free quotas that are going to expire. And these barriers in trade, sanitary and phytosanitary measures, we expect that Ukraine and the EU will confirm this by signing this industrial visa-free regime, and will sign the agreement on conformity assessment and the acceptance of industrial products, so-called ACAA agreement, and also about customs issues. We expect that during the summit, the sides would confirm the preparation to recognition of authorized economic operators until end 2022 and joining to European joint transit system until 2023. And for Ukrainian producers and exporters, these issues are really important. Now, digital agenda, that is a priority for EU. We believe that during the summit, we will confirm this aspiration of Ukraine to join this digital market. And we see that there are many discussions concerning this topic, but we need a document for confirmation. Now, state procurement. We believe that Ukraine really went along this way, and we believe that EU will agree to hold formal assessment of the progress of Ukraine in the framework of the association agreement, that this will mean that Ukraine will broaden the access to state procurement that are done in the European Union.
Transport. In this area, we expect to have some success, and we believe this is the most realistic out of our expectations. We hope to sign the so-called Open Sky Agreement about joint airspace, and we also expect to get better conditions and better access for Ukrainian transporters to the European transportation market, which will correct the distorted competition. In the area of financial services, we expect joining the single euro payments area. In the energy sector, we have rather ambitious not expectations, but wishes for this summit. We believe that Ukrainian NGOs and civil society has to speak loudly, explaining that we have done much approaching to the single energy market, and we would like to get in exchange the guarantees for the use of Ukrainian energy transportation structures, and we think it's the right time to initiate the transfer of the gas exception points to the eastern border of Ukraine. And we hope that this our request will be met. As for financial sources for financiation of the renewable sources, development in some areas, and we'll expect for the liberalization of the commodities trade and services trade. And I will start with the simplest, the commodities trade. We expect that in 2023, the quotas, the list of commodities will be extended and quotas will be reviewed. And because the previous quotas will expire simply. Then about technical barriers to trade sanitary and phytosanitary measures. Here we expect that the EU would recognize. We also expect to get the list of future steps in this matter, future measures to be taken, sign the ACAA agreement, and currently we're carrying out the second phase of evaluation in course of that agreement, and we hope that the further steps would be done. The next steps would include radio equipment, hazardous substances, and limited use of the substances, eco-design, energy labeling, and medical production. And also we expect to move forward in certification of the production of medical goods. This is very much expected by Ukrainian businesses. The next is customs issues. And here our overall objective is to join the European Joint Transit System, and the agreement on the simplified customs clearance of some operations would be implemented. The digital agenda. Some aspects are not reflected in the association agreement. Here we need the development, proper conditions for the mutual electronic trustee services and IT communication services. These are both big elements of the digital market, and we have to reach some progress in this area and move forward. And also we expect to refresh the appendix or addendum number 17B. As for the public procurement, we expect some progress in the area of mutual access to the public procurement market. As for the transport sector, we hope that upon signing the agreement about open Here we will start to move forward rapidly, and we need to launch ASAP the first transition period, then the second transition period. We also expect liberalization of access for the motor car transporters, this problem has been complicating with each day. Then financial services. We expect to join the SEPA area. We hope that within 2 years Ukraine would be able to join it, and within 2 years after that we will update our appliances. If we assume that by the end of 2022 this is done, that the roadmap is being implemented, then in 2023 we may expect that the EU would start to apply to Ukraine the internal European instruments to assess the anti-corruption and justice reform instruments, which are similar to the Western Balkan countries' approach. For example, the progress in justice area, the EU Justice Dashboard methodology, and the EU Rule of Law reform report to measure the progress of judicial reform. Why this methodology is needed? To see a better better border controls between Ukraine and the EU member states, and this should become the biggest political priority. The next, our expectation by 2023, under condition that the parties would start consultations about better border control between Ukraine and the EU member states, then in 2023 we would be able to resolve the collision which exists now between Ukrainian and the EU legislations, which currently prevent this joint border control for Ukraine and the EU. And the biggest issue is that in terms of justice, freedom, and security, there is no special addendum to the association agreement, and we suggest to start consultations and develop a new annex to Chapter 3. We believe that this is in the interests of Ukraine and the EU. Creation of the new annex would require, of course, further ratification, but this should not prevent us from thinking about it and starting consultation. As for the energy sector and energy efficiency, we should think about preservation of the energy transportation potential of Ukraine and the connection of Ukrainian energy system to the NCE. that is approaching to the third energy package of the EU. Actually, the annex is already reviewed, and the only issue is to start its full-scale implementation. As for the green issues and environment, in 2023, we expect to get better access to the European instruments on decarbonization and to get closer to CBAM mechanism. A review of the association agreement, specifically the annexes 30 and 31, will be required in 2023 if everything that we expect would be implemented. This is the right moment, according to our agenda, to give the floor to the representatives of the governmental bodies. Ms. Forsyuk would not be able to stay with us by the very end of our event, but I hope that she's already connected and is with us now. With this, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Zhovkva, Deputy Head of the Presidential Office of Ukraine. Thank you for this opportunity to hear what are the expectations of Ukrainian civil society from the Ukraine-EU summit. I would mention now what are the official expectations from the summit, and I hope that at the end of my intervention you will see that option was suggested by the President of Ukraine in his meeting with Jean-Michel, and now we have the first draft of this document, and currently we are finalizing our draft version, and we today we'll try to look at some major aspects of this document. Of course, not at all the aspects, because it is at the final stage of preparation, and among the key provisions of this document, there are the follows. We will have provisions about European aspirations of Ukraine. Of course, this will be not easy to get support to this statement from the EU side, and we will try to prevent the reflection in that declaration, the limitations for Ukraine. We also will promote broader Ukrainian access to the EU market. We will emphasize on the achievements of Ukraine and the assessment of or evaluation by EU of the Ukrainian efforts to implement the AA agreement. Also, we expect to emphasize the territorial integrity and state sovereignty of Ukraine, and also a request to Russia to stop its aggression. We clearly would set who is the side of the aggression, that is, who is active aggressor. Then we will put responsibility for non-implementation of the Minsk agreements, and then we will request for the strengthening of sanctions where it is necessary. Of course, we would emphasize the role of Ukraine among the three countries who have got association agreements, and the next block of provisions will be about economic aspects. As for the major achievements which are reflected in the document, Ukrainian party would present its vision of the achievements in implementation of the association agreement, and Ms. Forsyuk would describe in more detail. Today, it was mentioned about customs tariffs and quotas, and we expect that the first round of customs negotiations would happen immediately upon the summit, and that is by the beginning of 2023. We will come to the point which you described in your document. As for the revision of the annexes, like number 30, number 31, we would mention in our draft statement that the work on those annexes should be finalized, and as for the environmental block, it will be reflected in the final communique in the last moment, because the situation has been changing rapidly. On the summit, we will continue our energy dialogue and bring it up to the new strategic level. That work had started back in 2016, and this time we will raise the issue of not only gas transportation system of Ukraine, but about other energy subsectors like electric energy, NSOE issues. As far as you might know, the NSOE connection remains in the Ukrainian agenda, and of course we will raise the issue of green energy, the hydrogen issue, and all that will be reflected in our energy negotiations. That is, the work will continue in the energy area after summit. About joint security and defense policy, this will be a big emphasis of our work, and Ukraine is planning to second its officers, military servants to the EU LT mission. I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you and give the floor to Natalia Forsyuk. So the expectations about joint airspace will be signed between the President of Ukraine and the EU leadership. There is a decision about the second tranche of the macro-financial support, and about mutual recognition of the digital COVID certificates between the EU and Ukraine. An agreement about the open space, airspace will be enforced immediately upon its signing. With this, I would like to stop and give the floor to Natalia Forsyuk.
Please provide your considerations, or as I understand, there are some things the governmental office is not fully agree with experts. I heard that there are some proposals. I would be glad to hear about them. Please, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I have several minutes because the delegation leaves to visit Euro Commission, and I agree with the thought that was provided that expectations of the government practically fully coincides with expectations of experts who have been working on this issue for a long time. The only thing we should take into account that this joint declaration, this is worked thoroughly on with the EU side. That's why from our side, we'd like to say that concerning justice bloc, there is a big focus on judicial and court reform, but we were not sent the information concerning this roadmap, and we believe that this will be the main principle in the text of the document of the joint declaration, but there won't be any reference to the roadmap of G7, and this won't change the essence, and the efforts will be really concentrated on this topic. I would like to say that we are preparing Ukrainian version of the assessment, and Ukrainian side provided the assessment, and maybe this will be even an annex. And yesterday, in the course of the meeting with Vice Premier, that joint assessment of Ukrainian and EU side will be the annexes to the joint declaration. And the sides agreed the joint assessment will be carried out right after the summit, and they will provide detailed recommendations about midterm steps. And I believe that we have a big field for cooperation between the bodies of the executive power, business, and experts in order to properly fix those priorities that were voiced today in our midterm prospect. For example, for the next 5 years, we proposed our mechanism by order of Ms. Stefanishina. In Ukraine, we created intergovernmental working group, and we propose to EU to consider the opportunity based on the Committee of Association and Trade Committee to hold meetings at the level of deputy ministries in joint working groups to work on this roadmap. And we will discuss these shares of implementation, and we will focus more on those things we would like to reach, even if it is beyond the association agreement. As we've said before, political, economic situation in EU and in Ukraine changed a lot from the times of the conclusion of the association agreement. And we should speak about liberalization of road transportation, joint customs control, how to organize it properly in the shortest period possible, and other aspects. I need to end because I should leave, and I will be glad to speak with you in the nearest future and to tell you more about these instruments with a view of our joint work. Thank you very much, Natalia. I believe that we will be able to discuss now some of these issues, and for example, that we should provide these annexes, and we didn't have this in Ukrainian practice. Maybe other parties had it, but I never heard about it. Of course, I would like to continue communicating with you and with experts concerning these priorities. We need to work together on this and to work with EU. We communicate concerning our priorities together because we are working for success of Ukraine. And we wish you success in Brussels negotiations, and we go back to our discussion, and I believe we should give the floor to the parliament representatives, and then Igor will continue. Ivanna, please, about the ideas concerning what was proposed in this document by us. Thank you very much for holding this event, for initiation of discussion, for this thorough work that was done by different specialists from different NGOs in order to propose this option of priorities. You know, maybe we agree with the majority of priorities. The only thing, I always want that these priorities be grounded in reality. And we should understand that today we need to propose something to go up to the new level. I'm glad that in your recommendations you reflected some ideas that were approved as recommendations for government officials, and in the work of our integration committee, we had a meeting in the Zakarpattia region, and we focused on the analysis of our capability to implement the strategy of joint border control. And one of the conclusions we've reached, and we included in the recommendations for the Cabinet of Ministers, including involvement and the use of the summit and the process of update of the association agreement to involve European Commission into negotiations concerning establishment of the joint border and customs control, in order to involve the European Commission into negotiations concerning complicated issues we face in the automobile market and the transportation market, and this will be reflected not only in the declaration of the summit, and this is really important, but also in the process of this updating of the agreement. If it is taken into account, we will believe that this is a joint victory. You know, I'm grateful to you that you have this priority concerning Annex 27, and this is a breakthrough story that we've managed to do, and we worked on this from all sides. It's a pity that 2 years after that, we do not have efficient monitoring, not only monitoring, but even assessment mechanism that would be introduced by the government, between the government of Ukraine and the European Commission, despite all addresses from the committee. And I continue to speak about Annex 27 during the Coordination Council meeting and decisions of the committee concerning any document that relates to the energy sector. I believe that if we get united and if we have political will, and the government would put more effort to work on this with the European Commission, but now I believe that the government and the Commission do not provide proper response, because in some part of our energy roadmap there is some lagging behind in the process, and I believe that we should provide more efforts in this. I'm grateful to the experts that you raise this issue concerning involvement to the declaration of summit concerning this G7 roadmap in the reform of judiciary as a basis for implementation of those tasks in Ukraine to really move ahead in the European integration. This bloc, justice, freedom, and security, this is a comprehensive bloc. And today, unfortunately, we are lagging behind, not moving forward. And Natalia said that we should not focus on the points that were implemented and how we assess our movement in the implementation of the association agreement. But in this bloc, justice, freedom, and security, the implementation in this bloc is 87%. So we have ambitions on this. And we implemented what we promised. But we do not have proper mechanisms, and we didn't think about it when we created this agreement. But now we should think about it. How to show, how to reflect in our assessment when we do the step back. For example, corporate governance reform, we stated there are 100%, but as of today, we know that all the steps that were done before, they went back, and we do not have proper reflection where we are now at the moment. This is not just criticism. Why this appropriate reflection is needed in order to understand where we should put more effort in order to move forward, in order to insist on liberalization of trade in goods, on quotas, on tariffs, and other things. And one of the indicators is corporate governance and other things. So I would say several things about justice, freedom, and security bloc. Very important is the legislative work and joint work between the government and the parliament, but also we need implementation of what was envisaged in legislation or what is planned to envisage in legislation. And when we are speaking about the mechanism between the government and the parliament that could become a platform for working on expectations, positions of parliament and government to use it in the negotiations with the European Union. And we have the commission, but this is de facto a declarative commission. And this is not about the discussion of the issue and solution, but we see some reports that everything is okay and that Ukraine is actively going in the direction of the implementation of the agreement. And we attend the commission meeting, and I say that I cannot understand how these common tasks are formed and what are the criteria for consideration of drafts. And in the result, we have the roadmap for as of April, 73 drafts should have been approved, but only 10 were adopted, in fact. In the result, we see 3 draft laws that were lifted as non-relevant, and 7 of them are regulated by national legislation. They should not have been introduced there. 30 of them are partly take into account or do not take into account the directives of the European Union. If we work like this, no ambitious tasks will help us, and these issues won't make sense. And we see the work of the civil society and the focus on objectivity of the processes of self-assessment, and this is the self-assessment of the implementation of the agreement and joint assessment of the agreement. This should be additionally of value. Also, you do not provide priorities concerning transport in other areas outside automobile transportations and outside the only thing that was adopted in the sphere of transport in the parliament, this is the law on internal waterways. For us, this is the inclusion of Ukraine in waterways of Europe. And for us, this is an important priority. I would propose that it should be reflected in the tasks that we pose for ourselves for the short-term prospect. This is the opportunity of European integration and the opportunity at the same time to have these waterways used by water transport, and this is an important task that should be reflected in this document. And also, I would like that we have the joint ambition and joint achievements as a country. Civil society, government officials, parliament representatives, we should work together, but it's difficult to speak about European vector than 2 weeks ago or about a week ago. We witnessed how basics of parliamentary procedures are ruined. And this is the part of where we are moving and what we have as a state that speaks about democracy, supremacy of law, and human rights protection. And when democratic procedure in the parliament is violated, I believe this is a big sign concerning the ambitions and expectations concerning EU and Ukraine summit and what response we may get from the European Union, and to get this positive response from the European Union. So this document about waterways and water transport, this is a priority as well. We may develop this achievement, and this is a true achievement. And about Annex 27, we stress the importance of implementation in Ukraine, and also we do not see the wish in EU to provide complex assessment, and it is difficult for me to assess why we do not see such wish, but this is a fact and we should do something about it. This needs the institutional capability of the European Commission, and we should in Ukraine, we should deal with it. Not only parliamentary committee should do this, but others should join in the effort. And Ihor may provide his response concerning things that were mentioned to sum up, and then our experts will join, those who participated in the preparation. They are here and also online. Ihor, you are given the floor.
I'll review briefly the major items of this document. I like your suggested top priority about joint pre-border controls and joint policy as to the border controls, because it sometimes look like a vicious circle when you approach to the European member states. They refer to the Brussels, then Brussels refer to the bilateral talks on the pre-border control. So I think it's the right moment to put this issue on the agenda. I also agree with what you mentioned about customs issues. Our ambitious goal is to have a better border, better customs mechanism. As for the liberalization of the trade of goods, and in your document you planned or scheduled the year 2023, and I think that this is rather realistic date to start these negotiations. As for the digital agenda, COVID, of course, hinders the process, but we believe that this will gradually move forward. What I would like to discuss, I fully agree with the digital agenda. During our previous discussions, we emphasized that Ukraine has much to say in this area. As for the transport, I agree with Ivanna, what was said about the internal water routes, and I would like to mention that passage of the appropriate law for Ukraine is envisaged. I agree about the joint airspace, the liberalization of the car transport is needed. And we plan to do this and to apply the instrument which is described in Article 133. As for what could be added, what I don't see here, there's a joint block about the joint security measures, because we based our on the association agreement provisions. The mutual recognition of the security and safety programs, Horizon 2030, and the nuclear programs, I believe that they might be included here. The European Migration Network, it also could become an item here. Transport was already mentioned. About the energy sector, our goals are rather ambitious, and of course these issues will be raised in course of the summit. I would draw your attention to the latest statement by Miss Ursula von der Leyen. There was, I think, interesting statement about the gate to Europe and global gate way and gate to Europe. This is about infrastructural projects, about infrastructural approach in Ukraine, the regional approach about which deals with the 3 association countries is already applied. So I think in this context we might raise this issue at the European level. I think that's it. Now I'm ready to answer the questions. Okay, now the questions and comments will come from the co-authors of this document. Of course, we haven't included all the 20 co-authors to today's meeting, but we invited the experts in the key areas. Let us start with the justice, freedom, and security chapter. And we have the better representation in this area, and we all agree that something should be done about joint border control measures. And now I invite Ms. Irina Soshko, who is an expert on migrations, border migrations. Good afternoon. I'm happy that this issue is now brought to the focus of attention, and Ivanna mentioned about field meeting of the parliamentary committee, and we use the opportunity to discuss this issue with all the stakeholders from Ukrainian side, from European side, and we believe that this issue would gain a new impetus in the nearest future. Also, we had involved the State Border Service, the Customs Service, the Vice Prime Minister on European Integration Office. We had launched a dialogue with our partners in the EU and European Commission. That's why we expect that all those efforts would push forward the issue. There are some border checkpoints which are very much dependent on the new mechanism of border control. I would not explain and go in more detail what is needed to speed up the border clearance procedure and the passing time at the checkpoints. But believe me that we have to remove this problem. This is in compliances between Ukrainian and Schengen regulations as to the border checks and border passages. Mr. Zhovkva mentioned that this item might be included to the summit agenda, and we believe that this item should be continuously present in our dialogue with the EU. And my last statement is about the issue which was not heard today. This is the issue about visa liberalization, that is control and monitoring of the migration criteria, anti-corruption aspects, counteraction to corruption. I'm a bit concerned with the latest trend observed by our experts. Serhiy Sydorenko even wrote about that. When Ukrainians were advised to get rid of the second foreign passports which they possess. During the latest period, we observe fading of interest to the migration reports. Ukraine should bring this into focus to prevent further inconsistencies which appeared in the report. That is, communication issue is now one of the biggest with the EU issues and will persist in future if we do not pay attention to it. The EU report on suspension of the visa-free regime, and this is a good point, and we are concerned in the latest report, and we have to start our work on it. With this, I would like to invite Lyubov Akulenko from the Ukrainian Center of European Policy. She will discuss the transfer of goods and commodities. Luba, the floor is yours.
Dear colleague Serhiy, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. I'm speaking from home now, and about the document, I won't provide comments. I participated in the creation of this document, and I would like to share my opinion about the implementation of the association agreement. Now we are at the final stage of the preparation of the annual report, and I would like to share some things and also to respond to some words of Natalia, Forsyuk, and Ivanna. We prepare our report starting 2014. We position it as an independent report, and parallel we have an online system that is called Navigator that reflects everything, our progress and our failures. And when Ivanna spoke, I thought we should think about designer solutions when there is a big lagging behind or decrease. We have decrease in percentage, but if you do not follow everything properly, you won't see this going back. Also, Natalia said we should not assess ourselves in figures. Maybe this is her personal opinion. Why we assess everything in figures? We know when Ukraine joined EU, it will be assessed by figures. We should clearly understand the changes in legislation and in implementation. We will be rigidly assessed. Now we do not have it, but the figures stimulate us to the future. And Now about about 2021, it was interesting for me what we were able to do during this period, and do not mix it with previous achievements. We have results, but also we have in some spheres we do not have anything, and we also have going back. And there are some impressive results. We had changes in legislation concerning transport, you voiced it, concerning internal or domestic water transport, digital sphere, veterinary, vet medicine, security of products, finances. 6 or 7 systemic laws were approved during this year. The work is being done not only at the level of legislation, but also at the implementation level. We have customs reform, and Veronika mentioned about NCTS and our joining to it, and we started testing of the system throughout the country, and we hope that now Ukraine tested it in all customs points, and we expect that Europeans would invite us to this agreement. And also, as I remember, several years ago, we organized an event to speak about healthcare system reform and the issue of transplantation. Now we see that this reform is working. We see daily reports about transportation or transplantations. And we have a separate body that is responsible for transplantation. We have a register, special profession, transplant coordinator it is called, and other things. So the work is ongoing. We have achievements. Also, we need, and it is mentioned in the document, that we expect from the Europeans some steps in NCTS. And if we are not invited to the system, then this will be a problem. The same is ACAA agreement. We have a mission, and we should record what we should do, because with this ACAA, it looks like going in circles like a squirrel. Legislation changes, and Europeans will provide big money to their countries for laboratories, and we are not the members. We do not know when we will get money. And if we do not have this mission that should fix what we should do, we won't be able to join. Other areas where reforms are stalled, and I do not know the reason why. Postal and courier services are audio and visual, fighting fraud, competition. The law on economic competitiveness is not adopted, and starting 2014, we do not do anything in these sectors, and I do not know why. And also, a third block is about bribes. Because of COVID, we did the nominations, not contest in this public sector. Also, law on public procurement, construction works were excluded, and procurement of for 25th anniversary of Constitution and 30th anniversary of independence. And sphere of electricity, gas, renewables. I won't go into detail. Everyone knows that we use the mechanism of the CO in order to support the lowering of the prices for energy. National Agency for Provision of Quality of Education. This is a collegial body. They tried to make this body subordinate, not independent. And we see that there are spheres where we have success, in others we do not do anything, and in still others we are going actually back. So we are post-Soviet state, and it is difficult to implement the association agreement. We didn't complete the reform of the state service, civil service, and we do not have the membership, and the only thing that may save us is institutional strength. And now Natalia is appointed, and I have big expectations that we will face a driver, that we will have a team, and the sectors where we do not do anything, we will be able to do something about it, and we should make more effort in order not to go back in some sectors. And we have problems, because, for example, about customs code, labor code. These are big issues, and there should be a specialist who won't be afraid to deal with these issues, because often in our work we see, when we speak with our colleagues from executive bodies, they say that there are many difficult issues and they are afraid to deal with them. And but we have an agreement and we should implement it. Thank you. I would like to say that we position this document as expert document, but we also include associations and business, because this is civil society as well. And we have the representative of this, Volodymyr Lapa. He is former representative of the government. Before, he was representative of civil society. Now he is the representative of Ukrainian Agricultural Club, and he and also European Business Association participated in the creation of this document. So we included the opinion of those who directly work with business. Now I give the floor to Vladimir, and he's going to tell us about expectations concerning priorities in cooperation between EU and Ukraine, and also about sanitary and phytosanitary issues. Thank you, Serhiy, for this initiative. I believe it is really important concerning its influence Ukrainian and European stakeholders. European tradition is to hear the opinion of the public, and I hope this will work this time as well. I would comment on the report and the discussion we had before, maybe to go into detail about some things. There was an argument that the tariff liberalization is impossible and inappropriate, but it should be, because the lion's share of the tariff position is zero or is close to zero. But there are some issues. For example, this is about honey. First, this is in accordance with quota, then we will export after this cancellation of quota. And I believe that here we have some potential. This may not greatly influence on bilateral trade, but politically this will be important. About quotas, this is an issue that is really interesting for business. So this is a free trade agreement, and 96% is liberalized, and the most sensitive products have quotas, but this is not free trade. And business is interested in further liberalization and further broadening of access and access to European market. And sometimes there are asymmetric solutions. For example, the increase of quotas and the understanding we have now. But maybe there should be additional quotas for organic products. That would be logical. these commodities, for example, wheat, is easy to join the market, and organic products, for them it is more difficult to enter these markets, and the Ukraine should be more active in Green Deal, and this is about ACAA. We should wait for a mission, as I understood, and then we will speak about the broadening of the sphere of use. But we should deal with these issues parallel. And I agree with my colleague that if we have such an order, we will be lagging behind European legislation for a long time. But would EU agree on the broadening of ACAA? So this is a question, and also what I dealt with during my office, there's a certification of agricultural and food products. We have some expectations in this area concerning the change to the agreement and negotiation process. This is about the situation. Ukraine opened its market of certification. If you look at statistics, agrarian import increases faster than agrarian export. And we have raw export wheat, oils, we export them, and we import added value products. And despite the volume of the tariff and quotas, we do not have opportunity to export. We do not have this permission to export these products to EU. A successful mission to recognize Ukrainian system of control in seeds happened in 2015, and legal aspects were resolved in 2020, so 5 years between these points. So Ukraine initiated access to European market concerning veal, and the system of control changed, and we should start from a new. If Ukrainian side would allow to have this 10 or 5 years to respond to the request of our European colleagues, they would have grounded questions concerning this. This is so this is maybe the issue of enforcement. So we should write down some obligations concerning a timeline for resolution of such issues. Whether the equivalence is recognized or not in some time, the results may be positive or negative, and there should not be intervention, but response from both sides should be proper concerning this agreement.
Thank you for your very good comments. Perhaps we have to modify the document. Now I would like to Miss Oksana Prykhodko, who will speak on the digital agenda and about joint digital market. There is a huge area. Oksana, the floor is yours. Thank you for this invitation to participate in the survey and to participate in today's event. Of course, digital market is a huge area. There is much work to do here, but at the same time, we have very sound achievements here. In particular, Ukraine has passed the law on electronic communications. Perhaps I'm mistaken, but I do not know another successful examples when Ukraine drafted such a law simultaneously with the EU. That is, we had extrapolated very good provisions, almost half of the provisions from the EU Digital Directive to this code. But unfortunately, this very good law would not be implemented unless we have the European unless we have a special regulator, electronic services regulator. Of course, we have a special commission, but its role does not comply with the European role put on this regulator. This is a big problem, but this is not the most important problem for our European integration. The regulator on digital communications has to promote competition in the electronic communications market and to ensure the rights of the users of electronic communications. What to do now? There is the draft law which already entered the parliament, the draft law about the electronic services regulator. What is the most important? The European Code of Electronic Communications allows Ukraine to join the Bureau of Ukraine may get the status of observer. This Berg unites all the European electronic regulators, and they jointly decide who is abusing the market share or what does proper competition in the market mean. Oksana, I have a question to you. That draft law which you have just mentioned, whether it is ready for the passage, whether it should be discussed and passed, and whether during a summit we have to ask the EU to help us to establish such a regulator as you described, because we have to move forward in this area, and we have to bring our domestic electronic services market in compliance with the EU. I believe that we have to amend the draft law, which I mentioned, with the provision that we have to comply with the European norms and requirements and become member of that European organization in a status of observer. For example, we organized some events at the governmental level about digitalization. And we had very good consultations with our foreign partners on interpretation of the code that I described. there are some issues related to the proper translation of the code, the proper rendering of digital realities, which are already described in the code, and translation into Ukrainian, which interprets some notions like audiovisual services, etc. It's not because we do not have good translators and interpreters. No, that is not what I mean. I mean that we need professional discussion on what is in the code and what we should do. Then we do not have the certification body for the trustee services. Of course, we have Ukrainian Good School of Cryptography, and it was assumed that Ukrainian businesses would create the electronic signatures, trustee services, cryptography services, etc. But that is, I cannot, this had not worked, so to say. If the EU would agree with the proper level of Ukrainian cryptography services, and I would get the right to sign my tax documents and they would be recognized by the EU, then I would become happy. But this does not happen now. Then I haven't heard about about protection of personal data. This may hamper Ukrainian access to the joint EU digital market. Ukrainian legislation on cyber protection and personal data protection legislation and regulations are hugely distinct from the European one. It does not comply with it, and moreover it is not implemented, and this may lead us to a huge backlog in our digital aspirations. And now, Natalia Andrusevich, could you describe the Green Deal, which now had become the top priority for the EU? Dear colleagues, thank you for invitation to join this meeting. I plan to describe the green course in the EU and about the revision of the association agreement as to the environmental aspects. Today, I was happy to hear that it will become a big part of the Ukraine-EU summit. So first of all, I should warn you not to look at the revision of annexes 30 and 31 as on purely technical annexes. This revision should be seen in a broader political context with the inclusion of those directives which were omitted in course of the association agreement preparation, and to synchronize these annexes with the new European Green Deal. This is a good chance, a good opportunity to amend the green policy and green deals in proper way. This is about chemical substances. This is about noise, pollution. They are not included into the association agreement as of now, but they deserve to be included, and we have to raise those issues. In course of the Annex 31 review, we should look more carefully on the Paris Agreement about our ambitious climate targets, which are established in our second national contribution in our new strategies. So this is a good opportunity to synchronize our updated goals with the association agreement and its revision. As for the European Green Deal, I would like to hear more on that. Perhaps Yuri would, perhaps Ihor will describe that in more detail. The European Green Deal is not only about energy, it is about biodiversity, transport, agricultural sector, industrial policies, etc., etc. We would like to see a roadmap between Ukraine and the EU, which in this roadmap to describe all the initiatives which Ukraine is targeting. We may take the roadmap for Western Balkans as as a good sample, but at the same time to think about our own objectives. It was mentioned that the environmental instruments, we experienced some technical problems with connection. Unfortunately, the connection is interrupted. We have to move forward because we are exhausting our time. Now we have Miss Elena Pavlenka, who's a co-author of our document, a representative of the energy sector and civil society in the energy sector, and I assume that having finalized this document, perhaps we would invite the members of the energy platform, which Ms. Pavlenka chairs, would join this document. What are Ukraine's expectations as to the energy sector? As for the EU commitments in supporting the transit extension and around and about other issues. Dear colleagues, I would like to mention three things. As a chairperson of the Ukraine EU platform, and I would mention that yesterday we have passed a special declaration, which I believe is a quality comprehensive declaration which reflects the position of the civil society in terms of what we expect in terms of further implementation of association agreement from the government. When we had been discussing this declaration, the hottest issues were an attempt to cross out these two aspects from Ukrainian version of the document. These were two items. This was joining of Ukraine to the green course. We were surprised to see that there are some parties, some sides in Europe which are not interested to involve Ukraine to it. And the second was the Nord Stream 2 and the issue of solidarity. That Nord Stream 2 and the Turkish Stream, they create a threat to the solidarity in Europe. I would like to mention these things to emphasize how important it is for us as civil society and for the parliament to unite our efforts to become as open as possible in our cooperation for the sake of implementation of our objectives and targets in the EU. Ukraine has to stand for its national interests in the EU. And to be able to do that, we have to unite our efforts as civil society and the parliament at all the platforms. I've heard here the discussion about the regulator in the digital sector. In this context, I would like to draw your attention to the establishment of the regulator in the energy sector. Just passage of the law would not make the result that you expect to get. The law about the energy regulator was passed, but this has not resolved the problem. The Constitutional Court has ruled that there could not be such a thing as independent regulator in the energy sector in Ukraine. And while the European energy community would like to see such an independent regulator, they suggest that establishment of the regulator is much more complicated issue than the passage of the law about this body. And as for the review of the annexes, I would like to again point out to the situation in the energy sector about Annex 27. This was already mentioned. Thank you in this case, thank you very much for this discussion. That I will be happy if this annex will be improved. Thank you for your interventions, and I would like to invite to the microphone Mr. Zhovkva and to ask questions about the Green Deal. Whether we should insist today that Ukraine should be an exclusion from the CBAM, that is the CO2 tax. And maybe you would respond to what you have heard, to focus on some aspects. As for the Green Deal, the Green Deal is a comprehensive issue, and we have started officially our negotiations on the Green Deal and the policy in this area. I like very much the idea about the roadmap, and of course such a roadmap would not be passed during the summit, but we will start our dialogue about it. And of course, I agree that the Green Deal is a comprehensive issue. How ambitious Ukraine should be? Ukraine has to be ambitious, keeping in mind the reality that we have in the traditional or conventional energy sector, that is the gas issue. As for the Green Deal, it is the right time to start a dialogue with the member states who are champions in the Green Deal implementation. We have started our dialogue with Germany, bilateral dialogue with the Green Deal. Last week on Friday, I had a chance to have discussion with the German Minister of Foreign Affairs and Minister of Environment and discuss how they plan to decrease the gas dependence of the energy sector. And although now Germany is thinking about coming back to the conventional gas. As for Ukraine, where we should think about hydrogen technologies, and some countries start thinking about green hydrogen, that is hydrogen from the renewable resources. We have big water resources to start thinking about hydrogen. But here we should start thinking about specific projects and about involvement of the European resources to implementation of this project. Now, in Germany, when they are creating a new political coalition, and then the situation, my only question was about the sharp turn in the green course, whether that we may expect the sharp changes. No, this was the answer that Ukraine would stuck with all its previous commitments as to the renewable energy sector development and would not step back from that. Ivanna, I would like to add a couple of words. I believe that we all here on the same side and in agreement that Ukraine has to put ambitious tasks, and in order to implement that tasks that was mentioned by Lyubov, Akulenko, that we need to proper institutional capacity. During the last 2 years, we observe that for 2 years we had now the head of the governmental office of the European integration. We lost many civil servants in that area. All that weakened our institutional capacity. Then the reforming in the European integration departments, directorates in the ministries and governmental agencies. In 2019, the state service reform was suspended. Then in 2020, under the pretext of COVID-19, the procedure was distorted. And as for the proper translations of the European documents, that non-resolution of the translation problems would persist, and this will distort implementation in the issues. Just like we already experienced in the energy efficiency, we have gained these problems already. And one more thing which I've been dubbing at all the meetings. Let us produce the tables of comparison between the bills which enter the parliament. Absence of these compliance statements would extend the havoc in this area. Thank you for your contribution, and maybe Veronika would like to add a couple of words. Thank you. I wanted to thank for the meaningful discussion that we had today, and based on your comments, we will amend our document. Thank you for your suggestion about river transport. I like very much the idea about special quotas for organic goods. And one short comment that we have to formulate better the procedure, how we plan to implement. And I am very much surprised to hear that that Europeans agree against Ukraine's joining to the Green Deal. Thank you very much for your participation. I have noted all your comments very carefully. We had seen that there are some opponents to Ukraine participation in the Green Deal. I believe that our document was in bigger part devoted to the statement that the association agreement which we have now allows us to associate with the EU based on the mere implementation of this agreement. And there are a lot of sectors and subsectors where we can do this, and there are many opportunities given to us by the association agreement. But nevertheless, I agree with Ivanna that we need to have properly operating and performing institutions. We should have the compliance tables with all our new pieces of legislation, and that Annex 27 should be carefully reviewed and amended with the quality monitoring mechanism for both sides, for Ukraine and the EU. This will be the quality review of the association agreement by a simple review of Annex 27. And the EU evaluation and proper monitoring. This is the thing which should be required very thoroughly from Ukraine. We should we should request evaluation from the EU to check our successes and our achievements against this assessment from the EU side. And based on the positive assessment from the EU, we would be able to request for further recognition of our successes. Thank you. Thank you to all the participants. I believe that discussion was meaningful and was rather successful. We revealed many aspects which might be improved, and I believe that further Ukraine EU